Hello there, my very good friends. Andy Murray here for What Culture Wrestling with another afternoon news video. The hits just keep on coming, and they certainly aren't great. We're going to cover a report that Triple H has effectively been relegated as Vince McMahon returns to power in WWE, and on top of that, we've got a report on Backstage morale taking a huge knock following Vince's return to Raw last night. I've already said my name, don't need to do that again. This is the after news. I would say good after news, but I don't think anyone's really too happy to hear about this stuff, but it does build on the things that we covered in this morning's news video. So I figured it was important to jump back on ye olde YouTube and keep you abreast of what's going on. So got a report here from Wrestling Observer Radio, of course, it's Dave Meltzer, going over what effectively happened at Raw last night. For those of you who don't know, might be impossible, but if you don't, Vince was at the show. There was a bunch of last minute rewrites. People were apparently a bit frustrated, understandably so. Dave has come through and just hammered this whole thing home really on Wrestling Observer Radio, stating that Triple H has effectively been relegated to busy work in his role as WWE's Chief Content Officer following Vince's return to power last night. As if there was any doubt, and as if you hadn't already put two and two together on this situation, right? Things have effectively gone back to the way they were before Vince was forced to resign in disgrace last July. The show has gone back to, any point within the past 40 years, Vince is running the show again. That's this report, that's what we're saying here. Vince is effectively retaking control of WWE following the Endeavor acquisition, which will see WWE and the UFC merge into a new co. As a result of this, Paul Levesque, Triple H, no longer has final say on creative matters. That's Vince's realm again. He has final say again. So that means that if there's something on the show that he doesn't want to happen, it's not going to happen. Everything's going through him again. And this is despite him and Ari Emanuel hopping on CNBC yesterday and Vince saying, yeah, I'll be involved in the big picture stuff, but I won't be getting down in the weeds. This has already been proven to be complete bollocks. Why on earth would you trust a single word that comes out of that man's mouth at this stage, or any stage in the past 40 years for that matter? But Dave goes on just a little bit, noting that, again, as others have reported, that Vince was effectively running the show on last night's Raw, which was very poorly received. WWE state has effectively returned to the way it was back then. So the 9 months we've all had enjoying this, is it even 9 months long? About that, whatever. This period of Triple H as head of creative, it's very different now. He's obviously retained that position as Chief Content Officer, which was confirmed following the Endeavor transaction, which was announced yesterday. So he's still got the same job title, but it sounds very much like the role is greatly diminished. Busy work. That almost makes him sound like an admin assistant, like he's filling in the spreadsheet of what Vince has done on the show and going out to grab coffees and stuff. And yeah, it's not great, guys. I'm not gonna lie, it's not great, but we've got another one to cover here as well. This is from PW Insider's Mike Johnson, and it's probably the most comprehensive thing we've had so far. Noting that there's been a huge negative shift in morale as a result of Vince's involvement in Raw. And, I think when the first few reports came out, a lot of more hopeful people might have gone, it's cool. He was just sitting there at Gorilla, man. He was in town anyway. It's WrestleMania weekend, the Hall of Fame, potential buyout, all of that stuff. Nah, he was literally running the show. PW Insider have confirmed that he had heavy involvement in the episode, despite his assertion on CNBC that he wouldn't be doing that. Rewrites were coming in as late as 15 to 20 minutes before the show hit the airwaves, which sources have indicated didn't feel like the kind of changes that they'd gotten used to under Triple H. And the alterations didn't stop coming there. They were actually rewriting parts of this show as it was going on, which is a hallmark, a trademark move of Vince's previous run as chairman and CEO when he was also head of creative. We used to cover stories like that almost every week on the news, right here in this studio, in this chair, and they'd all but disappeared under Triple H, who, by all accounts, was writing things in advance, getting plans set in stone, and not just tearing the whole thing on a whim because he's a 77-year-old billionaire who's lost his marbles a long time ago. Now, PW Insider sources have noted as well that there was no doubt that Vince was firmly back in charge following the Endeavour acquisition. And although Raw began with Paul Levesque running the show a bit more on the headset, this changed as the night went on to the extent that Vince was running it as the point person in gorilla position, sitting in that seat once again. Talent have noted a huge negative shift in morale upon realizing that things had effectively returned to where they were prior to Paul Levesque becoming head of creative, which happened after Vince's resignation last July. The place felt nuked. That is a comment from one of PW Insider sources, a direct quote. And there is a general feeling that McMahon will continue overseeing everything that's going on with creative now falling under his influence. That feeling of resignation has been made worse because Triple H is genuinely very well liked and respected backstage in WWE, and some people feel like they're starting to lose the sense of security they'd built between SummerSlam 2022, which was his first big pay-per-view, and WrestleMania 39, which was 2 days ago. So there you go. Others have noted that they're not as negative about it because they always felt like Vince was going to return to creative at some stage. If you remember, when he resigned, he retained majority voting power through his shareholdings. So I guess more of a cynical but realistic mindset amongst these folk. They weren't sure, this group of people, if Vince was just there because of the WrestleMania weekend and all of that stuff. So, hey, there we go. Those are the stories, those are the facts. Give you a quick, brief summary of my thoughts on this whole situation. I think that when Vince's resignation was announced and, you know, it came through that he'd retained majority voting power, a little thing planted in the back of my head, and it told me, hey, this is probably going to get a lot better. Mondays and Fridays are going to be a lot more fun to watch. They'll be a lot more logical. People will feel like stars. There'll be good stories. And so it transpired. The shows have been a lot more enjoyable. But that little thing that planted in the back of my head was the knowledge that at any point, effectively, something like this could happen. And Vince could find a way back in, no matter how drastic, no matter how wild or elaborate the scheme. Because he had the majority voting power, he could effectively hold the company at ransom when it comes to decision making, and that's what happened in January when he wrote to the board of directors, and this is out there, it's a legal document, you can read it if you don't believe me. He wrote to the board of directors and said that unless you let me back in as executive chairman, I will not consent to any sale of the company or new media rights deals being signed, which WWE needs, because no matter how many people tell you ratings don't matter, TV deals are their primary source of revenue. So he held them to hostage, he got back in, he replaced board members who weren't going to vote his way with his old cronies, George Barrios and Michelle Wilson, and here we are. He has complete control of WWE, the biggest company in the world wrestling-wise. Once again, we are back to exactly where we were prior to his resignation last summer, and the show you saw last night was probably a reflection of what the shows are going to be like going forward. I don't like being the bearer of bad news. I don't like being Big Danny Doomsday on these videos, but we're reporting what has come from PW Insider, Wrestling Observer, and other outlets as well. We covered Fightful's stuff on this earlier on, and I'm sure there will be a lot more. This is real. This is happening. The shiny Triple H penned era WWE programming appears to be over, and barring a seismic shift in the wake of the seismic shift of yesterday, doesn't seem like that's going to change. It's a real shame for the people who've earnestly invested in this product over the past, best part of a year. It's a real shame for people who just found their enjoyment of the product completely transformed, and I found it a lot more enjoyable myself. But that's business, unfortunately. It's cold. It's brutal, and it lets people like Vince McMahon, who grew a mustache to distract you from the fact that last year he was accused of multiple counts of sexual misconduct, grew a stupid mustache to distract you from that, and now here he is. It's crazy. I'm Andy. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your time. I'll see you later.